Good afternoon and welcome to Bruin Career Insights, Creating a Great Company Culture. I'm Angela Scales, Senior Director of Bruin Connections and Alumni Career Programs here at UCLA. We're excited to bring you this very special episode because today is UCLA Alumni Day, and this year it's all online at alumniday.ucla.edu. The Bruin Career Insights monthly series focuses on bringing alumni and experts to talk about areas of career and professional development. Each and every one of these episodes is powered by membership. So a special thank you to our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making events like this possible. Take a look at the live chat to see how you can upgrade your membership. You can also use that live chat to ask any questions throughout the episode. Our featured speaker today is Juan Sotelo, the COO of Payscout. Not only is Payscout one of the fastest growing privately held global payment processing providers in the US, they were also ranked number 17 on Entrepreneur Magazine's list of top company cultures. So let's get started. Juan, you graduated from UCLA in 1996 with a degree in political science. How did you get connected to Payscout and what attracted you to work there?
Well, 1996 is a long time ago. So let me give you some reference point. We didn't have cell phones. I had a pager, and we didn't have email. So in those years of experience to Payscout, hopefully I can share something about our culture and what we've done to differentiate ourselves. And Payscout was of interest to me because of a great friend of mine, Cleveland Brown, who is the CEO and co-founder. We went to high school together. I tell a loving story about when I first met him on the basketball court, 6th period PE. I dunked on him. He fell down, I shook his hand, and that was the start of our relationship. John Wooden would be proud. And from there, we went to UCLA together, which is a fantastic connection that we had together through our whole maturation as individuals, as people. And through my experience of startups, and both of us being born and raised in Silicon Valley, seeing ups and downs, booms and busts, myself working for Oracle, in small companies like Zoho that went under, and acquisitions that I experienced through BEA systems. Cleveland asked me about 4 years ago, can you join Payscout and help me scale? I think we got something here. Small team, less than 10 people. And I came in and said, all right, let's do this. Let's start. And what I liked about it is not only him, the other co-founder, Manpreet Singh, they had an always learning mentality. And they empowered and they challenged. And with that, the excitement gravitated, it hit me. And I said, okay, let's try to do something great. And let's start with culture.
So because it's the business of finance, why do you think it was important to establish that strong company culture?
I think for any company, it's important to start with culture. You have to codify culture. It informs your employees on how to behave and make decisions. I think it alleviates anxiety too because of that knowledge. I know how to behave. And we always say if you tie that with logic, we don't care about the outcome. We believe that you made a right decision through that process of cultural and logical alignment. And that psychological safety that we give our employees allows for risks. And allows us from a vision standpoint to our vision statements become the thought leading fastest growing global payment processing provider in the world. So I think there's alignment there. Second, when you're in fintech, when you're in the finance industry, you're moving money. There's a great deal of responsibility. Security is top of mind. Integrity and trust is our #1 cultural attribute. And we talk about this and we instill that in each of our employees. We have a feedback welcome culture where best idea wins. And that allows people to provide feedback. And you'll see cultural breakdowns in certain companies. And we built a structure where hopefully that feedback is welcome. So if there's anything that it goes against integrity and trust, especially in fintech, there is a door that is open and you're able to talk about it openly and freely, being transparent and honest.
So given that this is such a focus, what did it mean for you and for Payscout when you made the Entrepreneur Magazine list?
Our first thought was that I was very happy for our employees. I talk to a lot of people and they say, oh, you should be very happy as an executive, building that culture. I said, well, we started, but the employees embody our culture. They are the collective behavior and decision-making of our culture. So for me, it was a win and a celebration for each and every one of our employees. For those cultural champions that align with the same common language that we've codified, they are validated through Entrepreneur magazine that they embody a top company culture. And it's just a great feedback loop because you're encouraged to be a greater and greater champion of the culture. Not only were we number 17 in the US for mid-sized company, we're also number 1 in the USA for fintech, and we were the number 1 overall for Los Angeles, and we're very proud of that.
That's fantastic, and so proud as fellow Bruins. So can you tell us a little more about the backbone or kind of the foundation of Payscout's corporate culture, and maybe how it comes out in tangible ways?
It starts with leadership. I talked to Cleveland, the CEO. It has to start there. And I asked him a question. What type of company would you like to work for? What are the attributes of that company? How do they behave? How do they make decisions? We need to codify that. And it was a great exercise. And we looked at various companies we respected and admired. And our mission is to support the entrepreneurial dream, one transaction at a time. And through that mission, we picked up a little nugget of that from Starbucks, where they talk about an experience one cup at a time. So that was really interesting how we can grab from companies we respect and admire and build that into Payscout. The other part of that is I told them that it had to be genuine. It has to be genuine in leaders. You have to show. If you don't show, the employees are going to call you out. They're not going to tell you, but they're going to say, you're not demonstrating what you're talking about. And that's critical.
So you mentioned that it was only 10 employees when you joined the company. Now, 4 years later, how has the culture evolved, or have there been changes that have occurred because of scaling the company to be larger?
The company has evolved greatly. So there have been various changes. We're learning. The first thing when we codified, we had a clear vision, mission, culture, attribute, and belief. So we clearly stated that in documents that we have a BMCB is what we call it. And through that vision, mission, culture, attributes, and belief, we learned, for example, in feedback welcome, that the employees were giving us feedback, but it wasn't constructive as we would like it to be. And it was, well, I provide feedback, and therefore it should be taken. And so that was the educational process. And it was, well, feedback, we had to define it. So we had to define our culture. We had to define our attributes. We had to define what it meant for feedback welcome to be constructive. And so as we evolved, we created personas, leadership personas. We define our cultural attributes, and we made clear what it means to have a social responsibility to make the world a better place.
So having been at a larger company like Oracle, is there a difference in creating company culture at a smaller company versus a really large company?
At a smaller company, it's much easier. At a smaller company, usually, if you're in one office location, you could gather everybody together. When you have a company the size of Oracle, or as you scale, you have to have cultural champions in leadership at the second level, at different levels of hierarchy. And you have to make sure that it's a scalable, systematic rollout. There needs to be a lot of memorization and internalization of the culture that takes place. And because of that, and if you do that right, then you're able to scale. So at a company a much larger size like Oracle, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to make sure on a global scale that you're culturally aligned, that you speak the same language. I also say that there was an interesting case study, and they took that I read, and it was about how do you scale globally. And every culture is a bit different, so you have to have some flexibility in that regard. So the case study took place in the United States, and there was offices in China, and there was a feedback welcome environment. In this environment, the CEO expected everybody to interact and engage and on the floor. And when he went to China, that wasn't occurring. everybody was quiet and he was concerned. He said, this is not culturally aligned. He said, well, what did you want? We want greater collaboration. Okay, in China, he discovered that if you were talking at your desk, the perception was that you weren't working at your desk. So therefore, what is the true outcome that you want? Collaboration. Therefore, they scheduled it within certain break times. Okay, at 15 minutes at the top of the hour, everybody stops, collaborates. At 45 minutes, we work, heads down. And so they're able to structure it culturally aligned and have that same common language, but it was sensitive to the Chinese culture and that work ethic. So it's interesting how you scale. Yeah. You have to be culturally aligned.
That's so interesting. We got a great question from the live chat. In thinking about this space and your work with company culture, Julie asks, have you had any mentors along your journey, maybe even specifically in this space, and how your vision for company culture has developed?
I've had many mentors, and I think everybody should seek mentorship and advisory relationships. And you learn a lot too from poor company cultures and poor leaders. You learn just as much of what not to do. And so that is an education process. But my mentors gave me first principles, gave me certain values that I hold true and try to bring in to Payscout and to help build the culture collectively. It is important to get some feedback and validation of what you're doing to ensure that I think there's scale and understanding. Advisors that we have, for example, said, okay, I love it. You have a great company culture. How does this provide value to the customer? I said, gosh, that's a great question. And how do I articulate that? And we're in that exercise right now. It's really exciting. So how, you know, it's great for us to recruit, retain, and inspire employees to attract those A players. But then how do we demonstrate that value to the customer? That's an exercise we're going through. And it's an interesting question. And we want to come up with a good answer.
So in that direction, how would you say that the company culture affects your business decisions?
It affects, hopefully, every business decision. It's how we behave. It's how we make decisions. I'll give you a really granular level on picking a desk. Right? You would think, how does picking a desk? We built out our office in Los Angeles, and it was a blank slate. We talked to our furniture vendor, and our vision is to be a thought leader. And we said, do you have a thought leading desk? I don't even know what that means. I go, well, that's our vision. So when we're going to pick some furniture, we need to have a thought leading desk. And one of our attributes is innovation. So, you know, can you tie it to innovation? And can you tie it to social responsibility? Our belief that every individual has social responsibility to make the world a better place. And that's our responsibility to our employees. That, oh, I think I got it. I think I got it. Okay. And he came back and said, there are these motorized desks. And this was several years back. And sittings and new smoking. You're going to have less health issues. Ooh, that aligns with being socially responsible to our employees. And this is where I thought it was very interesting, because he said that if you have an average of 3 meetings a day, it's 10 minutes of meeting less if they're for 45 minutes, because if you're standing and having a meeting, you want to end it a lot quicker than when you're sitting. And I said, oh, the desk pays for itself in about 4.5 months because we have opportunity costs reduced. So that's a granular example of how a decision is made for a desk and as it relates to culture. And now scale that and compound that, you're going to realize that every decision should be made through a cultural lens.
I love that. We have the stand-up desks here at UCLA, and they're wonderful. We got a really interesting question in the live chat from Brian. He asked, how do you determine if a potential employee will be a good fit for the company's culture? And is that more important than their skills and experience? You know, kind of that whole concept of fit.
Yes, great question. Great question. We have a great gatekeeper in people operations, our HR. Led through Ebony and Suhani, our recruiter. She does a fantastic job. And their gatekeeper position is very important, because if you have quality in, you're going to get quality outcome. And the first question we ask ourselves is this person a good cultural fit? and we have 8 cultural attributes, and we have a belief statement, and we assess. We have a cultural assessment phase of the interview process. You can have the skills assessment, etc. However, if the cultural alignment isn't there, that person will not be hired no matter what the skill sets are in terms of advancement. And here's what leaders need to know. The worst thing you could do in an organization is to hire somebody or keep somebody, more importantly, retain somebody who isn't a good cultural fit, yet is a very high performer. What you're telling your employees is that culture is not important. Performance trumps culture. Culture trumps performance, because if you have great culture, you should, within our organization, perform well. And that is the #1 way that we believe we can differentiate.
I love that. The great culture can drive great performance. So a cool question that we got that I think about a lot myself came in the live chat around how do you celebrate successes as a company, through your culture?
We believe in celebrating wins. It's part of our fun attribute. And when we have wins, we come together and publicly acknowledge it. So we do have a guide formalized in where we can give shout outs, anybody within the company, if there's certain wins that take place, and celebrating those successes. We have 8 cultural attributes, and every other month, the leaders select employees that demonstrate those cultural attributes best. Like, for example, innovation. So who within the company best exemplifies innovation? And so then we'll have at an all hands meeting the acknowledgement and the rewarding of that success, that win. And we're trying to publicly acknowledge our employees as it relates to culture to help reinforce the behavior that we want to see.
That's excellent. A question that came up when some of my colleagues were talking about this upcoming episode was around mid-managers and how can they best implement the company culture and have an impact if maybe they're not making those decisions, but how can they make sure that they are, bringing them to their employees and, upholding that culture?
We ask each of our employees to do 4 things: memorize, internalize, articulate, and teach culture. The epitome being the teacher. And it starts by memorization. You have to memorize our vision, mission, culture, attributes, and belief. You have to memorize the definition of those attributes. It's the only way that you can then internalize, which is a very difficult stage. And you're going to reconcile through that internalization how to articulate, which you'll spread, and the word about the culture, reinforce the culture, police the culture. And teach, and that's the epitome. And then once you're teaching that, then you come full circle. We formally also, in every onboarding, culture is a huge part of that process. We ensure that during the onboarding process, at the very beginning, and not only in the interview, but as soon as you walk in the Payscout office, that culture is emphasized. And so that's the education process. That's what we go through. In fact, we show everybody a lecture that Cleveland Brown, our CEO, gave about culture that he performed at UCLA. And that's part of the onboarding process. And through that education and enforcement, we expect leaders to self-police as well.
So another great question in the live chat, I'd love your thoughts about, Rex mentions that he loves that concept of, great culture driving performance. And one of the things he wanted to know about is when celebrating success, how do you then redirect, acknowledge, or otherwise address opportunities for growth?
We have a culture that empowers our employees, that challenges our employees. So culture being the foundation. Think of it as building a house. You're laying the cement. You have your vision, mission, culture, attributes, and belief. You're defining it. And then the next layer is the attraction, the retention, and the inspiration of A players. And these are the people. And we aim to inspire via our culture. So we challenge our employees. And through that challenge, you're able to stretch and grow your employees. Bain & Company did a great study about this. And we believe that this is in alignment with our culture of inspiration. they had a baseline of satisfied employees that they measured and their productivity output. So satisfied employees, 100 index. Then they measured engaged employees that had 44%, 144 index of more output, more productivity. But inspired employees were 2.25 times more productive than satisfied employees. And through that inspiration, how do you get there? How do you get to that inspirational stage? We believe you get there through the culture, because that culture is going to challenge you. The culture is going to drive the attraction of A players, and A players want to work with A players. And you're going to get inspired. And through us having a vision of being a thought leader, we're going to ask, is what you're doing thought leading? And if not, make it the best in the world. And those challenges arise through our culture, and you get inspired by other people that we make sure we're good gatekeepers, we bring in, and it's just a virtuous circle.
This is so inspiring, Juan. I love all of this, and I agree 100%. We got another question from Catherine. She asked, what have been the most valuable activities or other ways that you have interacted with the local entrepreneurial ecosystem as you've started to scale your company?
Yeah, we believe in supporting the entrepreneurial dream one transaction at a time. It is our mission to do so. So how do we get engaged with other entrepreneurs? Well, we tied it to our belief of social responsibility is one example. We are a partner with a nonprofit, the JAF, is the Jefferson Awards Foundation, and they empower students at the junior high and high school level to address social ills within their community in an entrepreneurial way. And we measure it and we assess it, and the winner goes to Washington, D.C. with a grand celebration. So I think at a very early stage in impacting our community through our belief, we're teaching these entrepreneurial skills. We bring in our marketing manager, we bring in a project manager, we teach them how to build out programs that address ills and be able to measure and report on those. And that's one way that we can help from an entrepreneurial spirit perspective. We also engage with, for example, UCLA, and we do our best to guest lecture and to teach the importance, for example, of culture from an entrepreneurial lens. If you're not thinking about your culture, then you don't know how to behave and act. So therefore, how are you going to know if the person that you're hiring, and trust me, your first 10 hires are more important than hire number between 200 and 210. They have a bigger influence. And in order to understand if they're a cultural fit, you have to be able to define your culture. You have to be able to codify it. And every entrepreneur out there should be asking themselves, what does my culture look like? And how do I codify it?
So now that you've created this incredible company culture, what would you say is the hardest part of your job, and what is the most enjoyable part of your job?
And one of the hardest parts of my job is to ensure that we retain the A players. You've attracted, you've recruited, you've retained, and how do you do that? You have to constantly inspire. And you should be up at night. You should be up at night. If you're not worried that your employees are going to leave, you have the wrong employees because they're not A players. Everybody's trying to recruit them. What a great model to engage in, because it force feeds you to inspire, to challenge. And that's what really keeps me up at night. And then on the other side, the most enjoyment and the fun part of it is the coaching. Is the coaching through the culture, is the teaching. I believe that great leaders teach. I believe that great leaders listen. They hire people that are smarter than them. Doggone it, we all should hire people that are smarter than ourselves as leader, and whatever subject matter, a vertical that they're in, their expertise. You hired them for a reason. So listen to them, empower them, challenge them, ask questions, make sure they're aligned with your vision, make sure they're aligned with certain directives, but you are not there to lead discussions. You're there to make sure that they're on track. And you're there to build the collective IQ of your team. You're not there to show how smart you are. That doesn't help anybody, and that doesn't inspire anybody.
I couldn't agree more. The 18 years being it keeps me excited.
Yes.
So another question for Bruins who are watching out there, who might be thinking about starting their own company, their other entrepreneurs, what would be your advice for where to start in terms of setting up that great company culture? You know, what's that first piece?
I think the first piece is to look at other companies you respect and admire and study them. And what I mean by study them is we're in a great time. You can see different leaders within companies, and you can then listen to their interviews. You can listen to on YouTube, whatever speaking engagement they've had. And you can read a lot of different books and audiobooks. At every phase, study these great company cultures. And you're going to start to connect the dots. And you're going to see this thread that weaves between great companies. You're going to say, wow, they all are kind of saying the same thing in a different way. And then how do I take those nuggets and apply it to my company? But it's the first stage is educating on yourself of what makes a great company culture. And you do that by studying leaders within those companies, the CEOs, the founders. Engage in that education process, and then you'll start to be able to codify and articulate your culture.
And speaking about that area, is there a book or a podcast that you listen to that you think is particularly helpful, or a book that maybe has been really influential in your own leadership style?
Yes, many. I love studying the CEO of LinkedIn. And I think that he has exemplified a great culture through compassionate leadership at scale. So you go on YouTube, just looked up the LinkedIn CEO, Jeff, and he has amazing nuggets of knowledge. I love the A16Z podcast, Andreessen Horowitz podcast. It's an MBA within a podcast. And you hear from various thought leaders, especially within Silicon Valley, and start to understand their thought process. I think it is important to listen from various perspectives on leadership. So A16Z is essential. I love blitzscaling. Blitzscaling is on YouTube again, hosted by Reid Hoffman, one of the chair of PayPal and a VC investor, and he brings in a lot of these different leaders within his lectures, and you start to hear various opinions about how to scale, and they talk about culture quite a bit. So keep it simple. From the CEO of LinkedIn, A16Z podcast, and blitzscaling, I think that's a wealth of information where you could start, and from there you start to hear about other resources that you could tap into.
I love that. So an interesting question from Jen. She asked advice regarding how, as an executive, to deal with a senior peer who takes undue credit for work that's attributable to someone else or to a larger group effort.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I think we've all experienced that. And for us, if that should occur, I always tell people to have a discussion, to talk about that situation directly with the person. Our feedback welcome culture states that feedback should be welcomed, even if it is an uncomfortable conversation. And that means you have to be receptive to feedback and to actively listen. I think you engage directly one-on-one and in a constructive way, because rarely, in fact, I've never seen it where one person is 100% wrong and one other person is 100% right. There's something in between. There's some misunderstanding and communication. So that for us, if you work through our culture and feedback welcome and best idea wins, it could be an education, which we say through customer happiness. You educate the customer, and that's who you're talking to, and say, this is how I felt. This is how I feel. This is maybe how we can improve upon the acknowledgement. And this is how you're going to inspire others. By the way, when you publicly acknowledge, you make me work harder for you. So therefore, you're going to benefit as well as the team. So I think there's an education conversation that needs to take place.
I like that. So as we wrap up, what would you say are maybe the 3 nuggets that in this space of company culture you want Bruins to take away from today's discussion?
I think one, whether you are starting a company or you're about to enter a company, make your decision based on the company culture, whether creating one or whether figuring out if one fits for you. So go through a lens of company culture. 2, if you haven't codified your own personal culture, do so. You know, what is important to you? What are your values? What do you believe in? You have to write that down, and you have to really think about some of the principles that you have internally. And then 3, with any career decision, make sure that you look at whether joining or hiring people through a lens of culture over performance, because culture will drive performance. And if you do that and you weave through culture as an important factor in making all those different decisions, I think in the end, you're going to be happier and you're going to be more inspired. And therefore, you're going to have a greater output and productivity in whatever you do.
Such great nuggets, and love all these resources you provided. Thank you, Juan, so much for this great discussion. It's such an important area in terms of the sustainability of an organization, and I know it's such a hot topic for job seekers and entrepreneurs alike. To everyone who's watching, thank you again for joining us and participating in the discussion. If you missed a portion of today's event and you want to share it with others, you can always find the recordings on our UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. Don't forget to send us ideas for future episodes of Bruin Career Insights, such as, are you looking for a specific career topic, like how to turn a side hustle into a full-time career, or learning how to manage a team? Send us your ideas at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu. Once again, thanks to Juan and to our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making events like this possible. Enjoy the rest of UCLA Alumni Day, and go Bruins!